What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest is someone who rejects normality in his pursuit to disrupt the hospitality industry. He's designed more than 200 unique hotels across the world, and I can say they're very unique as a super fanboy. He is a strong advocate for making the industry more sustainable and integrates environmentally conscious decisions into his projects. He's the author of the book More Escapism, sitting up over my left or right shoulder, whichever way you guys are looking, but it's been there since I moved into my new barn studio. He is the director of Bensley Studios. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Bensley. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's a pleasure.
Actually, I'm going to say the pleasure is all mine. Having lived in Southeast Asia for a couple of months in 2018 with my wife and 3 wonderful children, we were based down in Ho Chi Minh, but every weekend, because everything is so dense there, we'd go up to Da Nang, we'd go up to Hanoi, we went out to Laos, we went down to Singapore, and I think we must have stayed at about 5 or 6 of your properties, and I hadn't really heard of you before being out there. And I've been in the hospitality design world mostly as a purveyor of furniture, but I'd never walked into properties like these properties in my entire life. And I got the feeling, and I know every project has constraints, but I feel like the projects that I had stayed in, there were very few constraints. I mean, you were just over the top creating these different worlds. And so I'm a huge fan, and the experience was incredible. That being said, before we get into all of that, I'd love to just ask, as I ask every guest, how do you define hospitality?
I think that hospitality is sharing. And for me, as a landscape architect, interior designer, it's about sharing what I've learned about a particular place in which I'm building. So, for example, you just mentioned Da Nang. That before we even started Da Nang, the Intercontinental in Da Nang, we visited something like 25 different temples. And I went and sketched for about 2 weeks. I sketched very comprehensively what I thought was the most interesting corners of Vietnamese temples. And I used that inspiration then to be able to build a 158-room hotel. And it feels fresh and modern, but it's also deep. It also draws upon a deep history of architectural history.
I think what's also interesting is many of the friends and clients that I have who design hotels, I think back in the recesses, they all, and I do too, aspire to be a hotelier. So like, it's really interesting and like really worthy to note that not only are you an architect, landscape architect, and interior designer, but you also are a hotelier. So yeah, how do you define hospitality as a hotelier?
I define hospitality as a hotelier also as sharing. And the reason that I became a hotelier is really just to have the apparatus in which to share the good things that come from out of hospitality. For example, this project that we've done at Shinta Mani Wild, sits on the southern portion of the Cardamom National Forest, which is in the southern part of Cambodia. It has, every single day, it has hundreds of people that are poaching and taking illegal woods. And what I want to do by building a small 15-tent hotel is to be able to then share the future of this beautiful property for Cambodia's kids, to be able to to be able to conserve it. I'm very much a conservationist. So by taking a hold and being the caretaker of this property, at least for a few more years while I'm alive, is that I'll be able to share with the future citizens of Cambodia probably one of the best, most beautiful corners of their country. And by making enough money to be able to police it, to preserve it and conserve it for hopefully eternity.
And I'm just curious, in Cambodia, what kind of flora and fauna is being poached and harvested illegally? Is it teak?
Yeah, no, the teak disappeared a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
And the rosewood disappeared a long time ago. So now it's basically anything and everything that the villagers can get their hands on. But most importantly, it is the wildlife that's there.
Oh,
like for example, the Cardamom rainforest, we used to have wild tigers there. But in the year 2003, the last ones were shot.
Oh man.
We used to have a lot more wild elephants than we do now. We still have some wild animals that pass through our property, but there's also mammals like the pangolins and the binturongs, these beautiful big cats, and the clouded leopards. And even a clouded leopard, very close to my property, was caught in a snare about 4 months ago and died.
Oh, that's a shame.
So, the snares are something that's very dangerous, and the villagers living around the park, they place many at one time. In fact, since we've been there in the last 6 years, we've picked up over 14,000 snares.
Holy shit.
That's
crazy.
It's crazy.
And they're so indiscriminate as well. It's horrible. Exactly. They can catch anything. Yeah, I've seen the effects of that in Africa, out on safari, and I haven't actually seen an animal with a wound, but like leading up to it and doing research, you see how indiscriminate and terrible all of these snares are. I don't want to go down that road, but I appreciate that you are conserving. And does that conservation, because you started off as a landscape architect, correct? Was that your beginning?
That's correct. I have an undergraduate in landscape architecture from Cal Poly.
Oh, okay. So from San Luis Obispo?
Cal Poly Pomona.
Oh, Pomona. Okay, cool. So I'm curious because one of the things that I notice in traveling to, whether it's Da Nang or Phu Quoc or the Rosewood out in Laos, the landscape, stepping onto the property, it's like I'm going into a journey somewhere else. And I think, I don't know if that's a virtue of, I'm sure it's both, but like just what can grow down there and the scale that you're able to work with. Do you start with the landscape first and then think about everything else? Or do you have a process of, do you start interior, exterior, landscape? How do you approach a project? Is there any similarity?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Dan. And I'm, as you may well guess, a lot of our projects we are given beautiful, absolutely untouched natural sites. So the key is to be able to understand the idiosyncrasies, how Mother Nature has been operating there, how the sites drain, how they take on the sun in the morning, where the winds come from, and so forth, to understand the idiosyncrasies of that microenvironment. And then it's the attitude of the architect. My attitude as being a landscape architect first and an architect second is that no matter what I do, no matter what great idea I have in building architecture, it's never going to be as good as what Mother Nature has given us. So my job, 100%, is to mitigate damage.
So basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're approaching these verdant, I guess more often than not verdant, bucolic, incredible landscapes and reforming them. So
No,
you
that's no,
not
not
reforming.
reforming,
Okay.
not reforming, understanding
Thank you.
to the nth degree, to understand them and to live on the site and understand everything about the site before you even think about what you're going to do to build on the site. Because I believe, even though I'm a pretty darn good architect, no matter what I put on that site, it's never going to be as good as what Mother Nature has already given us. So I want to put on something that's very light and does not interfere with how Mother Nature has been operating there for the last million years. If that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. And then, okay, so then you're really listening to the land and what Mother
Yes.
Nature is throwing at you. Then
Yes.
you mentioned Da Nang. Now, sketching out the corners of these really ornate Vietnamese temples, which tend to be typically very ornate, right? And then
Right.
but I would say what struck me about Da Nang was, well, first of all, I have just the fondest memories of my three kids sitting at the window in those little pajamas they give with the monkeys out on the roof approaching them. And I have some great pictures I'll put up here. So, like, thank you for setting the stage, the set and the setting for like that really powerful memory for me. But I also found, as over the top as that property is, there's also a real subtlety to it and just like sublime beauty overlooking the South China Sea, or and just with all the life and the fauna, the flora. It's I'm actually surprised you said you would do it by sketching the corners of Vietnamese temples, because when I contrast that to like the JW and Phu Quoc, that place is over the top and really ornate, and it's like you're transplanted almost into, or transported into, almost like a Harry Potter Hogwarts world of, what is that, Lafrac or Le something University, and but they're so
Lamar.
diametrically different, right?
Right. The what really works about that, about Intercontinental and Da Nang, is that what permeates the most strongly in that project is the bay itself. It's these two big peninsulas of hillsides that come to this from the south and from the north, looking out towards the east, in this big open ocean that permeates throughout every single corner of the hotel. So that is, we, how to say, the architecture once again became secondary. And I made it very clear that I wanted the natural beauty of the site to be primary. And that is still today the primary impact that people come away from that project with.
Yeah, and I remember having breakfast in those pods, hanging out over that bay, seemingly just floating, almost like I was in a bird's nest.
It's a Vietnamese hat turned upside down.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that. Okay, now, at looking at all of the, like, at all of your properties that I've been to, one of the really interesting surprises that I get is, and I could be in the corner of a bathroom, I could be somewhere, it's like looking down in the corner, up in these places that you wouldn't expect. You find so much surprise, whether it's the tile work, the millwork that's built in there, just all of the different elements of decoration, like at the Rosewood, all those little elephants at, I forget the name of that bar, but I don't even know where you found all those elephants or carved all those little elephants. But there's just all of this surprise. It's almost like those pieces of those artwork online where you see a scene and then you drill down to the book they're reading and then it zooms into that scene and then you drill down and you zooms into a whole other world. And that's where so again, like working in North America on projects, I just find we have so many constraints here. And I don't want to say you don't have constraints, but like I get the feeling that the palette that you're armed with in tackling most of the projects that you're on, it seems to be unlimited. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. That,
Wow. It's like
yeah,
it's like you have a dream canvas.
right. Yeah, pretty much. You know, we're given, oftentimes we're given a budget, And as long as I stay within that budget, pretty much more or less, that I can do what I like. And that's what clients like.
So how do you go about, because there must be a mutual attractiveness to finding an owner or ownership group that really believes in you and your abilities and your ability to transform. How do you find this? How do you approach that where you find that mutual attractiveness that they really stand behind you?
Well, there's lots of, in any particular year, normally once a week, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, we're asked to do a new project. So it's about this mutual dating, at the
Yeah.
beginning. And most people that are asking us to do a new project, they kind of know what they've been to Da Nang and they've been to, the Capella Ubud and so forth. And they know that layering of artwork that I do. They know that Bensley ain't gonna be cheap. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they get it already. So I don't have to do a lot of education.
Hmm. Now, I've also heard, and I've also heard that walking, I don't know if it was with an owner or someone I know, but you may have been walking a site somewhere early on, and as you're talking, jump into a pool while talking to them. Is that true?
I don't remember that one, but it could very well be true.
Ugh.
The first time I went into Da Nang on the beach, I was with my client, and uh, Dr. Chang. He's a good buddy of mine now. In fact, I just had dinner with him last night. I went skinny dipping in the ocean. Yeah, it was, and he still kids me about that.
Before any site work.
Before any site work, and I
So,
do that for every single beach project that we do, just to sort of bless it's something. It's a ritual of mine. So yeah,
well, it also must really connect you to the site, like you were talking at the.
exactly,
Wow. Okay. So
exactly,
for all the designers out there, when you're approaching a new site, like definitely disrobe and connect with the
and
site
jump in.
and jump in
Absolutely,
Ho-
yes,
with your heart leading.
exactly.
I'm also curious about in your process when you, okay, so after you jump in at a beach property or others, you mentioned earlier you would stay on site. Are you staying in a tent?
Yes, yeah. I stay on a tent, and then I put up temporary tents, and then I bring in big drawing tables, and then I'll actually draw and sketch on site, uh,
Wow.
just to be able to understand as I said, the idiosyncrasies and get some initial thoughts down. But yeah, it's about really understanding the site before you do anything with it.
And then with Shinta Mani Wild, I think you said there's 15 tents, but they're like super tents, right? I've seen the pictures. They're really thick gauge, like they're like structures, almost like a tree house.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Are you staying at a tent like that, or are you in like a Coleman tent that you're rolling out with some folding tables?
No, it's a pup tent. It's
Just a pup tent.
just a single man pup tent, yeah, that you can put on your back. And I do that every summer in Mongolia. I go up fishing for 2 months, and I'll sleep in a tent up there and do long walks and horseback riding for maybe 300 kilometers per summer.
Really?
That's what I really enjoy doing. No phone, no nothing, just get away from it all.
So I've been driving. My son is 13 and or
Huh?
14. He just turned 14, and I drive him to all these sport events everywhere. And I like
Uh
it's just like my job. I'm an Uber driver. But one of the things we do to pass the time is listen to audiobooks. And we're in the middle of this trilogy or tetralogy about Genghis Khan and the yurts. You're staying in your own tent. You're not in Mongolia. You're not staying in like a big gur or a big yurt.
In some places we do, but that moves with us on the boats as well. The Garrett's going to move, and we unpack the Garrett. It moves onto a raft, and then we take that down the river.
Wow.
And
Okay,
it moves with us.
so this is really important. You this is a ritual of yours every summer.
for the last 8 years now. This summer will be my ninth.
Okay. I was talking about this recently with someone about the need to disconnect and recharge. And I think all of us are so busy in our lives that it's really difficult to do that. And we have to make a concerted effort. What drove you 8 years ago to start that ritual for yourself? And what do you get out of it?
What drove me to do that, it's the best fishing in the world. It wasn't necessarily to disconnect, but
Mm,
that's a byproduct that I've learned to appreciate uh, as opposed to get freaked out about. Right?
mm.
And it's so wonderful. Yeah, and every year I always go with my staff, my Thai staff and friends and such, and we actually talk to each other, and for hours and hours we'll play cards and really connect. And it's so surprising how much difference it makes. And then when you get back to the airport, a month later, and there's Wi-Fi, and everyone stops talking to each other, and everyone concentrates on a piece of plastic. It's just the funniest thing.
So you're there with friends and staff and going around in these gurs, and you're almost like your own Bensley horde going and
Right.
catching fishing.
Genghis Khan horde, yeah.
Yeah.
Catch,
Oh wow.
catch and release.
Wow, that's amazing. And then what about the fishing is so good there? Are they just like big sturgeon? I envision like these prehistoric giant fish, or are they just like trout that we would have in North America?
Well, there is a land-based salmonoid family. It's called a taimen, and in China they used to have them there. It's extinct there, and so these taimen will run to 5 foot, 6 foot long, so they're huge. But then there's also trout, and that averages something like 22 inches or so.
Wow.
And my record in one day for 22-inch trout is 88.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, as you're talking, I think it might be the timing. Is that the one where you actually could, like, if you're using a fly rod, you would use like a mouse or some like mammal? Like they take big bait, right?
Yeah, we use rats.
Oh, rats. Wow. So those are
Yeah,
huge monsters.
yeah, about 8 inches long. Yeah, it's uh, uh, a wet fly.
Oh my
When that
gosh.
pops along the surface like it's trying to get away,
Hmm.
we use that when the water's muddy. But yeah, we use a number of different
Oh wow.
flies.
We might have to do an in-person recording there, and I might invite myself to come sit with you. I've always had a dream to go to Mongolia. Um,
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
so for most of the properties that I would look at in your book online, the ones I've experienced, they seem to be in very lush environments. And I want to share. We share a mutual friend, Namgal, who was involved with the Shinta Mani Mustang, and which just opened. And I've known him for years, and he, having this hotel be redeveloped and open in the midst of COVID, it's not a lush environment. It's in the foothills of the Himalaya, right? And to go from what it was through COVID, open, and then pretty much immediately land on the cover of Conde Nast. That just sounds like an incredible um, alignment of the planets to have all that happen on that project.
Right,
But how, as a
right.
approaching the landscape first, you can't really do much, or I'm probably wrong, but like there's not a lot to do with the landscape there because it's almost like a moonscape. Am I wrong?
Well, our neighbors in the village of Marfa, they planted a lot of apples, and we've also planted apples. And while the soils are really rocky, as long as you keep it irrigated, they will grow, but they'll grow very slow. But
Mm,
they're producing apples there and down in Marfa. It's a little bit more protected than our site.
okay. And then with the brand of Shintamani, how did that come to be? You're working on all of these other properties for others, and then Shinta Mani rolls around. What was the genesis of Shinta Mani?
The genesis was that back in 2000, that a fellow named Sakun Chanprida, who's a Thai Cambodian, the nicest man in the world, I call him, and he asked me to design his hotel in Siem Reap, and it's called the Hôtel de la Paix, to replace the bullet-pocked hotel of Hôtel de la Paix, which was built around the 1920s, and it had been shot up by the Khmer Rouge. And so even when we were there, the Khmer, you could still hear the gunshot of the Khmer Rouge. So we worked on it, and we opened this project, this Hôtel de la Paix, beautiful hotel, in about 2004. But when we opened that, there was no other hotels in Siem Reap. There was nothing there. So we had to look for people to work in the hotels, because nobody knew how to cook, in a reasonable Western sort of way. No one knew how to make beds, because there were no beds, right? And nobody knew anything about hospitality. So we were staying in a little tiny house, and we had a couple of rooms there where we were all staying there. And we had, a few maids and whatnot. So we decided within our own kitchen is to start training kids. And we did. And after about a year or so, we had enough people to be able to open the doors of Hôtel de la Paix, which, by the way, is now Park Hyatt. And we kept that. We kept that hospitality, even though we had enough people working for us, we kept that open. And because we didn't have the heart to close it. For example, Dan, the first year that we said we were going to open up a school, and we would put you up, we would feed you and clothe you and give you the books and teach you something, and for a whole year, and we have 35 positions. We had over 2,000 kids show up.
Whoa.
In order to, yeah. And the hardest part, over the first 10 years was basically saying, no, you can't. And so we just picked the poorest ones. Last, about 2 months ago, now we had our first reunion. We should have done this a long time before. And we had one of the guys that was in our very first year. And we found him, he was in the dumps in Phnom Penh, and he was only about 17 years old, but he was actually eating garbage to stay alive.
Oof.
And today he went through our project. Today he's a manager of a hotel in Singapore. God bless him.
No way. So,
yeah.
So you created this brand, you birthed this brand, Shinta Mani, and as an offshoot of that, and I'm sure it's like from these experiences like the one you just mentioned, you started a foundation out of this.
Yeah, it just sort of morphed into that, but not in a very formal way. But now I'm really wanting to get it going, get it going. So since COVID started, I've learned how to paint, and I love painting. I adore painting, and every day I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm out in my studio here at the house, and I'm painting. And on the weekends, I'll paint 12 hours a day. And last spring, I had one of my first shows at the MOCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art here in Bangkok. Within 22 hours, it was sold out. And I so thankful to all the people that support us. But last year for the foundation, via my paintings, we've made over $500,000.
No way.
And so every single cent goes into one, conservation, the support of this private army. We've got 158 people carrying AK-47s 24/7 in order to protect this very large piece of property called the Cardamom Rainforest. And then the housing around Siem Reap and so forth is absolutely horrible. Some kids, some families of 8 will live in a place not any bigger than 2 king-size beds. with a leaky plastic roof. So we've built so far about 150 homes that they're up on stilts and so forth.
Wow.
We've supplied something like over 1,000 bicycles for kids to get to school. We have started a program for milk for mothers, because a lot of times that moms who are many mothers under 22 already have 5 or 6 kids, right? So, and they have to stop feeding, breastfeeding at age 3 months, so that the kids start eating rice and water, and that's what they have for the rest of their life. So there's a lot of stunting and malnutrition. So that this program that we're doing for milk for mothers is a really good one for the villages that we do. And of course, there's villages that we have, basically there's no toilets. So everywhere you go, I hope, maybe horrible to say, it's open defecation. So that the groundwater mixes with sewage in almost every situation. And then you add DDT on top of that. Yes, people are still using DDT because it's the cheapest thing. And then you get this cocktail that's ruining the kids' brains.
Oh my God.
So that one of the big things we've done now is we've distributed something like 5,000 water filters, besides building wells and so forth. Because when I first got there, kids would have to go 10 kilometers to pick up enough water in order for the household to operate. Then they had no time to go to school, et cetera, et cetera.
So all of that requires focus, your time, and dinero, right? So was that your first big fundraiser, was selling your paintings, or how are you, what are the way, if people are listening and want to learn more or potentially give money, what's a good way to do that?
Well, we have a website called Shinta Mani Foundation, and there's certainly the ways in order to donate money. And the good thing is that we have this tax exemption for Americans. It's called 501(c)(3).
501(c)(3). Yeah. So they're
C3.
So I can make a donation after we speak, and then I can submit that with my taxes.
Exactly.
Okay.
And everything, Dan, I want to add too, is that every single penny that you would send us goes towards something in the field. All of the administration costs, 100% of administration costs comes directly out of my pocket.
Wow. Oh, so that's actually really admirable, because most of the times with many nonprofits, a huge percentage of that will go to administration. So you're actually funding all of that, and you're allowing all of that money to be distributed right to the people who need it.
100%. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it always will be.
Wow.
And every single painting that I do, for example, I will ask the buyer of the painting, what would you like this money to go to? So the average painting that I do is maybe $6,000.
Okay.
That $6,000, Dan, will buy 2 houses in Cambodia, or it will send 2 kids to school for a whole year. Wow. So I asked my clients, what would you like to support? They say, oh, we want to build a house. Then I'll take a picture of that house, and I'll take a picture of that painting that they bought, and I will put it on that house, and then give them the geopoint. And I make a video every single house that we've done when the family's moving in, with the big smiles, right? And their name, their painting, etc. So everybody that makes a contribution feels like they own it. And then I've had people that come out and say, "Where's my house? We want to go see my house." So we get in the car and we go out and show them, right? So they really feel as though they're part of doing something good, and they are.
That's amazing. We'll put links to your paintings also out there. And I know, like, my wife, as much of a fan of you that I am, my wife is a bigger one, and she's super duper excited. So I'm not going to let her listen to this, because I'm going to buy a painting for her that we're going to put up here. Yay! So we'll do that. We'll do that after. So if you were to look at the foundation as you're working on, you said, like, I'd forget, multiple a month clients are coming to you to design their hotels. One of the things that I'm not good at but we all get better at, I hope, as we get older, because time is our most valuable asset. How do you start saying no to projects and shift your focus more to the Shinta Mani Foundation? Like how have you found that balance? Because I can see how much the work you do that made you who you are excites you and invigorates you. It's coming through the internet like all over me. And then also the on the Shinta Mani Foundation, just hearing you light up, it's like that's also filling you up, and it's also invigorating you. So how are you navigating this from here to eternity?
Well, I look at my work with Shinta Mani Foundation as my night job and my weekend job, and my architecture and hospitality design as the day job. But I am definitely spending more and more time towards Shinta Mani Foundation. Definitely, sure, because I've built a lot of palaces and a lot of beautiful places, but you know what? It's a lot more heart filling when I build a $3,000 home and a family of 8 moves into it.
Wow.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It feels a lot better.
I can imagine.
Every single time I go to Cambodia over the last few years, it brings tears to my eyes, but two or three times a day, just because it takes so little to change lives.
Yeah.
So very little compared to what we have, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
100%. Yeah. Like in the developing world, dollars go so much farther and have such an outsized impact compared to what we're used to in the United States or North America or Europe. It's really unbelievable. And to be able to direct it directly to those who need it without the leaky air, so to speak, of all the administrative costs, and really have an impact is pretty incredible. So as I walk away from this, I'll think about things like maybe we could do a show or do something to bring attention to the Shinta Mani Foundation, because I think that is really admirable, and thank you for sharing. I mean, that's incredible.
Well, you know what's really cool about is that do you know Baker Furniture? I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Baker McGuire Furniture. Well, they approached me a few months ago, and they've given me a gig to design furniture.
No way.
Okay. And the great thing about it is that as a designer, you usually get between 2 and 3%. I said I want 10%, but 10%, 100% of that 10% goes towards the Shinta Mani Foundation.
Wow.
Okay. Also, I've said the same with RH, Restoration Hardware. Do you know them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've said the same thing. So that I'm going to do a gig with them. And then also Jim Thompson, they do a lot of silks and such.
Oh yeah.
Silk. They do really beautiful fabrics. They said the same thing. They'll give us 10%, but that all goes towards the foundation. So that I think that when those products come out next year at a place called High Point in North Carolina.
Yep, I've heard of it.
Yeah, I've never been there, but yeah, that's what they told me, that when that comes out, then we should really be able to start making an impact and getting some funds together, which would be wonderful.
Oh, that'll be awesome. I wonder if you can get some other promotion from the people that run it. I know someone I could probably put you in touch with as well, that runs that whole operation.
It runs what?
High Point, like the world market. It's Vegas, High Point. We'll talk about that offline.
Okay.
But that's really incredible that you're doing all of that. And I'm glad to share it.
So it takes a lot of time.
Yeah. But it's also, you're directing, you're putting your efforts to build something else that you love, and that's really giving back and impacting lives of others. So that's really resonating with me, and I think we can all do a better job and allocate more time and effort to that. And it could be to Shinta Mani, it could be to something that we hold near and dear. It's just being involved in our communities and giving back. And yeah, well, thank you for sharing. I had no idea. I want to go back into your process for a second,
Uh-huh.
on the design side. Is it true that most of your drawings are still hand drawn?
Most of our drawings still look hand drawn,
Look
and
hand
that
drawn. Okay.
right, and every single, how to say, every single design element starts with hand drawn
Mm.
idea, something that's hand drawn, and that every single person that comes into my studio is I won't even look at what they have in their portfolio. I will ask them to draw that Ganesha that's sitting over there next to the wall. And that's the standard. And I can tell within 5 minutes if that person is going to work at Bensley or not, because
Wow.
it's the way they start. And because no matter how good he is on the computer, if he doesn't have a good hand-eye coordination, he'll never be able to fit into or be a really good designer, I think.
Well, I think a lot can be said that because it's so tactile. I love hand drawn um, notes when I'm writing things. I find if I type
Mhm.
something, I'm not remember. There's some kind of a tactile
Yes. Yes.
timestamp. It's like a timestamp to that moment of when I'm remembering, and it's like a mnemonic device, much in the same way that you're jumping in the water before you start a project. You're imprinting your body into that site, and you're getting feedback from it, right? But I do feel like just being able to write things and write like all this madness,
Uh-huh.
it it ties me to this moment in time. So when I look back at this, I'll remember our whole conversation, but mostly the feeling. I think that's what it is. You're able to convey the feeling through your body into whatever you're
Yes.
imprinting.
Right. Whenever I'm teaching architecture or teaching to the kids that come through the office, is that I'll always say, throw away your handphone, throw away that, and then only take paper and pencil with you on vacation,
Mm.
because it's those things that you sketch are those things you're going to remember. If you take 5,000 photographs with your iPhone, you're never going to remember anything that's on
Yeah.
there.
It's interesting you say that too, because oftentimes we'll go away on a vacation, and I remember doing it at your properties. We would go with like a little Strathmore um, postcard book, right?
Uh-huh.
So there's, I don't know, 50 pages, and then with watercolors, and we'll watercolor kind of what we're seeing, and it really looks
Uh-huh.
almost nothing like what we're looking at, but actually it does a little bit as we get better. But the even though it might not be a realist capture of what I'm looking at, it always brings me back to that feeling, and then I can send it to people, and it's like they're getting a little bit of the feeling I'm experiencing as I send it to friends and family.
That's very cool. And your kids do that too?
Yeah, it's a little
Oh, that's
it's
very
harder to get
cool.
them to do it as they get older, but we're
Uh-huh.
actually we're going to Japan on Thursday, and I'm going to repack that stuff and make them do it, because now you've inspired me to lean into it a bit more.
Last weekend and right now actually is Tet in Vietnam. And I was at Da Nang and I did 3 days of teaching. But one of my favorite things to do is teach children how to paint,
Oh, really?
because they really, I really just love watching how kids will pick up this and pick up that color and do this, and are totally inhibited. Uh, and I find that is so cool. And then I take all of their paintings, and then we make one big painting out of all of their paintings. And the
Mm,
kids just love that stuff. And I
wow.
love working with them because I feel like all the time, I feel like I'm one big kid.
That's awesome. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is when you're in Mongolia, I'll show up with my 3 kids, and we'll have a painting session. It'll be
There
amazing.
you go. I like it.
So as we're kind of rounding the end here, you mentioned Jim Thompson Silk, um, and you live in Bangkok. So
Right.
I've been to Bangkok a couple of times, and I went to the Jim Thompson house. What's your theory on what happened to him? Because he disappeared. No one knows. There's a lot of conspiracy around it. Do you have any ideas?
You know, the yeah, I've talked to everybody about that too. In fact, also his biographer. I'm living in the house where his biographer used to live, the Jim
No
Thompson's.
kidding.
So that, but he absolutely has no idea as well. Even though that they had intimate relationships in back in the 60s. But I figure if I had to guess, I figure somebody knocked him off.
Really?
But yeah, I figured that, and it wasn't the CIA.
No,
But
something more
I
simple.
that, yeah, I think something much more simple. Yeah,
Well,
I think it was a love triangle or something like that. That's what I would guess.
Okay. Well, if anyone is ever in Bangkok, I really recommend it. I oftentimes you'll go to these museums, but it's really it's like a traditional Thai house, and it's frozen in time, and
Yes,
it is incredible. Like papers are still on the desk, and it's pretty incredible. Um,
yes.
as you're looking forward into all the projects that you're working on, Bill, and the Shinta Mani Foundation, what's exciting you most about the future?
You know, as far as projects are concerned, we're doing a really great conservation project in the north of Congo, in the French Congo, of all places. Not DRC, where it's very dangerous. French is smaller and to the west, and we're doing it in a place called the Tri-National Park. Being tri-national, being Congo, Central African Republic, and then the French Congo, and it's right at the confluence of those three countries. And if you've ever seen the program Our World with David Attenborough, it's a
Oh yeah, he's
BBC
amazing.
program, and there's one episode called Forest, and David Attenborough helicopters into this opening amongst the rainforest. The rainforest goes on for miles, and he says, "This is the greatest wild rainforest left on the planet, and this is Belly By, and I'm here with the gorillas and the elephants, and they are having cocktails here at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Look over there. There's 27 gorillas, and look this way. There's 47 elephants." Well, that's Belly By, and that actually is a place. And that is my site where
Wow.
I am doing a very small four accommodations and something like $4,000 per person per night. So it's really low impact but high yield, and then that, like Shinta Mani Wild, will generate enough money for rangering, and that's what conservation is all about. It's about getting enough people on the ground on your side.
Mm. And also creating almost an economy of having people come and appreciate what's being conserved, and funneling money and creating an economy around that, rather than
Yes.
making it more beneficial to serve others and help usher in that experience than poaching. And
Correct.
I also understand the poaching, because like people are hungry, and like, but there's I don't know, it's a really delicate balance that needs to be continued to be pushed, and I'm glad you're on the vanguard of that.
It's beyond that, Dan. It's not necessarily that people are hungry. They have to eat, because there's enough now that malnutrition and starvation is not part of Cambodia's current picture. It's about greed. And for example, a pangolin, it's a small anteater, it's size of just bigger than a football. That people in China, people in Vietnam are paying $450 for a pangolin to eat. And so they're endangered, right?
Yeah.
Because they figure that it'll make their sex better or something. I don't know. But right through across the board, there's a big market still for wildlife, and people want to eat that or take parts of the bears and so forth. And it's all just based on stupid superstitions. But it's greed. It's not starvation. It's not need to put something in your belly. If that was the case, I would understand.
I totally agree. And yeah, I don't know how to fix that. I like there's some almost intractable human, I guess the opposite of equality, that greed being one of them, one of the sins.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how to change that. But I guess you change it with one drop of water. One drop of water becomes the waterfall. You know, right? So you're
Well,
a very big drop of water.
what we're doing this year, what we're starting this year is a program for the villagers that live around the park, live around the cardamom rainforest, is that we're doing a bamboo growing program. And they get seed money to take their pieces of property to build bamboo. And then as an architect, I know very well that cross lamination timber is going to be the way of the future, and that timber and cross lamination is actually stronger than steel. And the building industry creates one of the greatest pollutants, creates more CO2 than even cars and airplanes. So if we can replace steel by way of bamboo and the lamination of it, then that's a big future. I'm doing a super high-end ski resort in Hokkaido right now.
Oh,
That is all cross-laminated timber, and it's also fireproof too, which is really cool.
where in Hokkaido is it?
In Niseko, between the two big mountains.
Okay, is it out of the ground?
No, it's not out of the ground. It's still almost through planning. It's called it'll be a Sukhothai resort.
Oh, cool. I'm going to be there next week skiing.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not out of the ground yet.
Darn. Well, it's really exciting, the timber skyscrapers that they're just messing around with, and as a carbon capture and not and just a strength perspective and from a renewable perspective, it's really exciting. The technology on something so old of timber building is happening. So it's good luck with that one. I'll have to keep my eyes on that.
So to keep the Cambodians out of forest and busy, that we're giving them seed money to grow bamboo, which then that'll be their cash crops.
Oh wow!
And then we'll be able to turn that back into laminated timber, and then we'll be using to build houses in Siem Reap and all the poorest places in Cambodia.
Wow, we'll have to do
win-win every way.
Yeah, we'll have to do like an in-person on all the Shinta Mani projects in Cambodia at some point in the future. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Cool.
Bill, last question. So you grew up in Anaheim, you went to school in Boston, you chose the path of architecture, correct?
Yep.
If the Bill I'm talking to now magically appeared in front of student Bill, what advice do you have for yourself?
What advice? Go to Thailand.
Sooner?
Well, actually, I went on my graduation day. I went the next day. So
you followed your advice.
Yeah,
you're living your dream.
Yeah, I'm living my dream. Yeah. What else would I have told myself? I wouldn't have lived. Yeah, I wouldn't have changed if I went to back. It wouldn't change very much. No.
Well, good.
Yeah. I got here and within 5 days I met my partner.
Wow.
And he is, the best thing that ever happened to me. And we get along like a house on fire 35 years later.
Wow. Burning down the house from Bangkok. Well, you're in the tropics, and I'm in the middle of a nor'easter with snow just pouring down, and I have to go fire up the old snowblower to get the driveway open.
Oh, geez.
But this has been wonderful, and Bill, seriously, I'm a huge fan. Like, whether you realize it or not, you've impacted some really incredible memories with me, my wife, my kids that will just always are just indelible. So you've and you've impacted so many others, countless in really meaningful ways. So I just want to thank you for your time and just getting to know you. And hopefully it's the beginning of a nice long relationship. If people wanted to learn more about you or Shinta Mani Foundation or Bensley Studios, what's the best way for them to do that?
To learn more about my studio is look up bensley.com. I mean, that's the
Great.
easiest thing. And Shinta Mani Foundation. And the hotels are all, if you just Google Shinta Mani, it all comes up.
Perfect. And we'll put all that in the show notes. I'll also put links to the books in the show notes. And this has been really wonderful, Bill. I know how busy you are, and I know the time difference. So thank you for putting yourself out there to all of our listeners and impacting me in another positive way. So thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening. Without you, I wouldn't be here talking to these incredible people. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please pass it along if this helped you think a little bit differently about hospitality. Thank you.